Gateshead. Just saying the name conjures up thoughts of Torah grandeur. The great Mashgiach and Torah leader Hagoyin Harav Elio Dessler Zatzal established the famed Gateshead Kollel, but he understood that the only way Torah can be rebuilt and thrive in the future is by educating a new generation of young women who will appreciate true Torah greatness. Rav Dessler Zatzal chose his faithful Talmud, Harav Mordechai Miller Zal, to lead the effort, and the Gateshead Seminary became the premier school, not only for the education it provided, but for advancing the central idea of Torah greatness in every Jewish home. The mission and vision of the Gateshead Seminary has not wavered because of the leadership of the legendary mechanech, Harav Todros Miller Shlita. It is a great kavod for us that Harav Miller took the time from his very busy schedule to address our convention this evening.
A gute Woche, teure Jiden. After the events of 9/11, my Yedid, Rabbi Rabinovitz of Brooklyn, traveled to Eretz Yisrael specifically to speak to our Rosh Yeshiva, Rabbi Moshe Shapira Zeichet Tzadik Livrocha, to discuss the matter with him and trying to find a pathway through the ashes. Rabbi Moshe asked him, "Tell me, Reb Baruch, do you notice any change? Are people any different after those events?" And he said, "I think they are." "In what way?" So I've noticed people are davening with more intensity, increased concentration. So Reb Moshe says, "Tell me, what do you think people are davening for?" So "I'll tell you," said Reb Moshe. People are davening, saying, "Ribono shel Olam, let's have the world back to the way it was. Let's get us back to the way we were." Which, of course, is not enough. And Rabbi Baruch said that when he came back to America, he went into a Beis Medrash and he saw one Yid who was davening, so what seemed to be a particularly emotional davening, and he asked him afterwards, "Would you be comfortable sharing with me? What were you davening for? What were you thinking?" And he said, "I was davening Ribono shel Olam, let us get back to the way things were." The pasuk says, HaKadosh Baruch Hu says to Yaakov Avinu, "Anoichi ered imcha Mitzrayma v'anoichi a'alcha gam oloi." And on that the Separnoi says, on the words v'anoichi a'alcha gam oloi means toisif ma'ale al mash hoyalecha koidem ridcha sham. You'll come out with milas which you didn't have previously. Because if not for that, what's Yetzias Mitzrayim all about? We were B'nai Chayrin before, and we're B'nai Chayrin later. It has to be that as a result of being in Shibud Mitzrayim, we come out, we are enriched. V'yachrei chen yetzu b'rechush gadol. V'anoichi a'alcha gam oloi. There's got to be that it's not enough that we come me'afela la'oira. If we had oira before, now it's afela, vos hab ich verdient, what have we gained? It's going to be me'afela la'oir gadol, an oir gadol that we could never have had if not that we went through the Shibud of Mitzrayim. All Goliaths and all Tzoros are rooted in Shibud Mitzrayim. All Yeshuos, all Geulos are rooted in Yetzias Mitzrayim. It always has to be V'anoichi a'alcha gam oloi. It always has to be that we come out of it b'rechush gadol with an oir gadol. But b'shum ponim v'yoifen, it can never be that we go back to the way we were. Let's try and find, in the situation that we find ourselves now, what's this Oir Gadol going to be? One ray of that light, of that Oir Gadol, we'll find it's just around the corner. It's Neiris Chanukah. That mitzvah chaviva ad ma'oid, as the Rambam defines it. We have it, that wonderful Yom Tov, that great mitzvah, is all because once one man was upset. Once one man was distressed. Who is that one man? It's a Rashi in Chumash. Because when Aaron HaKohen saw that he did not participate, he did not take part in the korbanos and the nedavos that the Nesiim brought for the inauguration of the Mishkan, Chol Shodaitoi Shlo Yehoyo Imohem B'Chanukah. Aaron HaKohen was distressed. He was said that he was not there. He wasn't part of it. He didn't contribute. HaKadosh Baruch Hu said to him, Chayecha, I promise you, Shelcha gedola mishalahem she'ato madlik umeitiv es haneiros. Your role will be greater than theirs, because you are going to prepare, you're going to light up the menorah. And the Ramban says, why dafka the menorah? Aaron HaKohen has so many roles, which is more than anyone else. All the karbonos, ketayres, avodas yom kippurim, which is only kosher for him. Why dafka are we pointing out hadlokas menorah? And the Ramban says, all the other avodas in the Beis Hamikdash, when we come to the Churban, they cease to be, they are defunct. The only avodah which continues even into Churban, even into the Golus, that's the hadlokas menorah, because the menorah in the Beis Hamikdash continues in our Neiros Chanukah, which explains why tzaddikim approached hadlokas menorah, hadlokas Neiros Chanukah with such awe, with such trepidation, because they knew that this is an avodah which continues the hadlokas menorah in the Beis Hamikdash. And all this because one man was upset. One man was distressed. Chol shodaitoi shaloi hoyo imohem bechanukah. When we have the joy in performing a mitzvah, when we have a delight in learning a blat Gemara, when we have an emotion of a meaningful tefillah, all that demonstrates the chavivus we have for our Yiddishkeit, the dveikus we have with our Torah and mitzvahs. But there is something else which indicates, which demonstrates the chavivus that we have, the dveikus that we have, even more than that. And that is when we have distress, when we are upset, when we can't be mekayim a mitzvah. If we are deprived of being able to be mekayim a mitzvah, or I was unable to attend the shir, that's when that demonstrates much more how dovuk we are to Torah and to mitzvahs. When Rav Hutner Zechariah Livrocha was a bocher, he kept a diary. And the Mishpacha released certain entries into that diary after his petira. 2 lines, he writes, Esmoil loy kiyamti es shi'uri betanach. He had a kviyas every day to learn Tanakh. And he says, yesterday, I wasn't able to keep that kviyas. Mizeh noidali sha'al yad oineg limut haTanakh, that alongside the pleasure that I have in learning Tanakh, shoilit bitzar haloi limud. Not only do I have the delight when I do learn, but I can also have the distress, the tsar, when I don't learn. And he writes, V'zehu tzad yoiser chazak. And that says more. That tells me more about my dveikus to Tanakh, more the distress that I have when I couldn't learn than the joy that I have when I do learn. Tzoras Yovon, as the Bach in Siman Tov Reishayin writes, came as a result that there was a hisrashlus ba'avoida. That means we were learning Torah, doing mitzvahs, but without enthusiasm, without dveikus, without that feeling of chavivus to what we were doing. There was a hisrashlus, it was lethargic. To put that right, there had to be a tzoras yovon. What was tzoras yovon? Tzoras yovon, there was no danger to our lives. There was no threat of annihilation. Tzoras yovon was nothing more. And as the Rambam says, Lo heinichu oisam la'asoik b'Torah u'b'mitzvos. They wouldn't let us learn Torah and be mekayim mitzvos. V'tzar li Yisrael ma'oid mipneihem. And that gave Yidden distress. That was the tikkun. The tzara itself, the fact that it was a tzara, just the fact that I'm unable to learn Torah, I'm unable to mekayim mitzvos, and that gives me distress. If beforehand there was a lack of chavivus, now we've come to the ultimate of chavivus. I can have a tsar in its absence. They tell a story. The Noam Elimelech, the Rebbe Reb Meilech, with his brother, the Rebbe Reb Zisha, were traveling and they stopped off in an inn. And Whilst they were there was a robbery reported. The police were called in to investigate. And everyone pointed an accusing finger at those two tzaddikim that it must be them. And without any further ado, the police marched them off and threw them into the local prison with all the criminals and alcoholics. And there was a very unsanitary situation over there. The two tzaddikim are sitting in the corner in that prison cell. And Reb Zisha notices that Reb Melech is looking particularly distressed. And he says to him, Melech, what's the matter? You know very well that wherever a Yid finds himself is exactly where the Ribono Shel Olam wants him to be. So why are you so distressed? Gam ki elech begeit salmoves lo iraro ki ato imadi. So Reb Melech answers him and says, that's not why I'm distressed. It's not the fact that we're sitting in this prison. There was very unsanitary conditions. In the middle of the room there was a chamber pot which was giving out not a very favourable odour. And Melech said, we can't daven mincha like that. And that's why I'm so distressed, not to be able to daven mincha. So Reb Zisha says to him, Melech, when did we ever have the opportunity to be distressed over not davening a mincha? We've always had the joy in davening a mincha, but the distress in not davening a mincha, that we've never had. When Reb Zisha said that to Reb Melech, the sparkle returned to his eyes, colour returned to his cheeks, and he started singing a niggun. And the niggun developed, they got up and they danced. And as they danced, all the other inmates, all those criminals and alcoholics in the prison said, can we join in the dance? And they had a very interesting situation. You had a whole rikida around the prison. The centerpiece was that chamber pot. A prison warden comes storming in and says, what's going on over here? And again, they point an accusing finger at those two tzaddikim and says, they seem to have some ritual of dancing round chamber pots. And he says, oh, is that what it is? And he goes into the circle, picks up the chamber pot, marches out with it. That'll show them. Says Reb Zisha to Reb Melech, oh, me ken schon daven in mincha. But that's what it is, an opportunity to be megale, our real dveikus. More than the joy we have when we can, it's the distress we have when we can't. Chol shodaiti shel Aaron, shelo yehoya imohem bechanukah. That was the shirish, that was the root of Neiros Chanukah. And that gave us, Neiros Chanukah means that the menorah is the light in the darkness. Even in a situation when, even in Golus, kishnis rachaknu meyad moseinu, ve'ena nachnu yecholim la'aseis chayvoiseinu bebeis bichirosecha. And we can be upset about it. That's Neiros Chanukah. Neiros Chanukah continues into Golus. In our situation today, once again, so often we found ourselves in a situation that Eina nachnu yecholim la'aseis chayvoiseinu. We're unable. We're unable to go to the Beis HaMedrash, to the Beis HaKnesses, unable to daven with a minyan. Unable, our children, our sons, sometimes unable to go and learn in yeshiva. Our daughters unable to go and learn in seminary. And yet, what they had over here was, we saw that they could be distressed about it. We saw they could be upset. Not only did we see their joy when they were learning, but the distress when they can't learn. V'zet sad yoiser chazak, as Rav Hutner wrote in his diary. So many mitzvahs we would have loved to do. And we were deprived. Bikur chaylim, we weren't permitted. Hachnas haskala, we couldn't go. Levayas hameis, and that distressed us. HaKadosh Baruch Hu is enabling us to enhance our dveikus, to increase our chavivus for mitzvahs. Not just the joy when we can do it, but even the distress when we can't. That is something so much greater. Chayecha shelcha gedola mishalachem. If chol shadaitoi shelcha gedola mishalachem. Rabbi Itzikel Mivurka, one of the great Polish Rebbes, he said a taich like this. Chayecha means I promise you, I swear by your life. But he said a taich. Chayecha is geidlich in Leben, shelcho gedola mishalahem. Oy bis geidlich in Leben, that is the greatest level of Dveikus B'Hashem. And here we are in an Aguda convention. How we would have loved to be able to come together, to meet each other face to face. Ishes re'eyu yoyme chazak. How we would have loved vayo einecha royes es meirecha, to see our Rabbonim, our Gedolei Torah, and to bask in their glow. But the situation is that we can't. Ein anachnu yecholim. We can't. And we have a chlishus hadas. We're upset about it. But that's a noir godel. That's a rechush godel. Shelcho gedola mishalahem. But this is what we're going to take from it. V'anoichi alcho gamoloi. We're going to be moisef a mile on what we had before. This is going to be our rechush godel. This is the mitzvah nechaneke, mitzvah chavivo hi ad ma'oid, because this is the mitzvah which results from a chol shodaitoi shloi hoyo imohem. The teitzah will be, the reward is, she'ato madlik u'meitiv es haneros. You'll be able to be madlik and meitiv neros, harogil bener, haven loy bonim tamidei chachomim. If we have that level of chavivus that we can be upset when we are deprived of doing a mitzvah, that fills our homes with the oyer of Torah, the chamimus of Torah, that guarantees shato madlik u'meitivus haneros, those neros are our children, our grandchildren, that will be zoicha to bonim uvnei vonim, oiskim b'Torah b'mitzvos, until we'll be zoicha to the ultimate rechush godol, the ultimate oyer godol, when Or Chodosh al Tzion Toir, v'nizkech ulonu bimhera la'oiroi, agutavoch un al lechtige Chaneke.